It's absolutely great. Okay, so for me, designing a space is really just not about creating this fabulous looking space, because that's wonderful. And we all love beautiful homes. Look at this home is absolutely beautiful. But the true feeling of accomplishment for me is really when I design a space that my clients thrive in, sensory-wise. When they feel good, when they're balanced, when their flow is good, when they're calm, when they're happy, and they walk into their home and say, oh, I'm so happy. And I achieve that through sensory design. And what I mean by that is it's about creating environments that really appeal to the body's senses and can alter behavior by actually relaxing or stimulating, calming, inspiring focus. So when I design a space for a client, it's really not all about my client showing me a picture of a hotel room in Italy that they went to and said, I want my bedroom to look just like this. We can do that, but we're going to incorporate sensory design as well. And when we meet with a client, we really ask a lot of questions, and many of them might be considered strange for a designer to ask. We'll ask, when you're on the phone, do you sit or do you stand? What's your most pleasant memory? What's your most unpleasant memory? When do you feel calm? When do you feel agitated? Do you like desserts? Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years, almost like a business interview? But there is a method to this madness that we have, and that helps us determine your sensory needs through all these interesting questions, which is a whole nother story, and that's a whole nother presentation because it's very time consuming. So I can design that space, that beautiful room that looks like a hotel room in Italy, but I will again incorporate all the sensory needs into it. So I became passionate about sensory design out of circumstance. I have twin children, they're almost 18 years old, 2 girls. And one of my daughters has sensory challenges, which means that her body doesn't react typically to touch, sight, sound. Her body awareness is not typical. Sense of smell is not typical. So imagine our sensory system to be a series of connections. I always like to compare it to a string of Christmas lights. You know, if one light isn't working, the whole strand doesn't work. So imagine one bulb being touched. For example, my daughter is sensitive to touch, which is called tactile defensiveness. So let's say she doesn't like being touched. Well, that perhaps could affect her relationships in the future, intimacy, communication. Looking for a job, she won't be able to communicate well. Finding a roommate, she won't have the social skills. So it's all about connecting the dots. Think of the Christmas lights. So in my daughter's case, we incorporated specific tools and items that helped her become more comfortable. So everything, our sensory system will affect all of our relationships, personal and professional, in our life if our body is not attuned. It is a fact that stressful and poor sensory environments have been shown to negatively impact the actual architecture of the brain. A good example is orphans in poorly run orphanages, very poorly run orphanages. I remember there was a very, very big documentary done about orphans in Romania many years ago, and many of these babies, there was no money, and they were not touched and coddled and loved. They didn't speak. So there was no community, so they didn't speak. So that's, again, the Christmas lights, you know, connecting the dots. Because of that lack of touching, they did not speak. 1 in 5 people alone in the United States has sensory challenges. So in this room, there are families who are somehow affected by sensory issues. So because of my daughter's challenges and me wanting to be heard, be the best she can be, I became very, very in tune with sensory design. And because of my experience as an interior decorator, the two just became a great relationship. So now I really incorporate sensory design in all of my projects, whether or not the client's even aware that I do, whether they're young or old. I was also a designer on TLC, which is the Learning Network, the Learning Network, the Learning Channel, TLC. Yeah, thank you. It's been a couple of years. See what happened when you're 50, you see? And so that led me to also being a designer on another show of theirs. There's a family called the Duggars. They have 19 children, and I designed their home for them. That was another TLC special. And so needless to say, designing a home for a family of 19 in Arkansas, a sensory home, is completely different. That's like, you know, on LSD or something. It's completely different than designing, let's say, a nursery for a young couple in Fisher Island who, let's say, gave birth to premature twins. the sensory needs are totally different. Nearly 500,000 babies were born premature in the United States alone last year. It's incredible, the numbers just keep rising. So a premature baby typically requires different sorts of stimulation, clearly, in order to have a healthy development. So what we would do is we would address those issues more. We would be much more conscious of trying to make that nursery more stimulating than a typical infant, which also needs stimulation, but in a different way. So this morning, Nancy, my Batman and Robin routine here, we're going to give you a few thoughts on creating the optimal spaces for your children, making them the best they can be because they're Fisher Island school kids, okay? You want them to be able to focus and be creative. We have some ideas for you and tips. You need a calming environment. We have some ideas for you. Since the brain has more plasticity during the first 5 years of life, it's much easier to initially wire a child's brain correctively through positive experiences now than attempting to rewire them as an adult when the plasticity is not the same. So, which we all know that positive experiences are needed really in order for our children to be successful at home and with their peers and in life. And it's clear you're all very good parents, you're here and you're very involved. So we all want the best for our children. So Nancy is an incredibly gifted occupational therapist, and I don't throw compliments out because I'm from New York, and we don't do that a lot. So Nancy has been working as an occupational therapist for over 10 years. She has her own private practice, and she focuses mainly on, well, in the Miami area, but she focuses mainly on children with special needs in the autistic spectrum. So autism, sensory challenges, visual impairment, any sensory issue. And what's incredible about Nancy is that she also has a blog where she's constantly giving advice to families and parents. And she also has her own products that she's devised because she works so closely with these children and it's all in her heart. Nancy and I collaborate many times when I have a client who has someone in the family with special needs. Let's say there's a child with autism or sensory challenges, a minor sensory challenge even. And I'm designing a space for that family, or I'm just doing their entire home. Nancy will come in and she collaborates with me. As an occupational therapist, she will look at the child's evaluation, she'll speak with the family, she'll meet with the child, she'll do whatever it takes in order for us to understand the sensory needs of the child. And then she will direct me and guide me. So let's say a very easy example is, I'm doing the boy's room, he's 5 years old, and I want to put a fan in the room because he gets hot. Nancy, after her evaluation, will say, you know what, Deb? No fan. He'll stim off that, meaning he gets too stimulated. It might not allow him to go to sleep. He'll just focus on the fan. So that's something that would have been a huge mistake, and I would have felt terrible about. So that's where Nancy and I work together. So having said that, Nancy now is going to speak, and what we're going to do is, we have products that we incorporate. They are the simplest products from Target, from here, from there, that they're just great sensory items that we incorporate into our spaces. So we just wanted to show them to you. Of course, we sell them all as a kit because, as I mentioned, many of our clients don't want to go to 100 stores just to buy these little items. But if not, you can get these on your own. And they're really hand-selected. You might just say, oh, it's just a lava lamp. But you know what? We took a lot of time to pick that lava lamp, or that stuffed toy, or this little turtle light, because it's really important that the items that we put in our clients' homes really are there to guide and help the child. So Nancy's going to talk about, which we thought would be interesting, is what are a typical child's needs mentally and physically in order to be optimal. And from that, then we can say, okay, and this is a great item. Because I think that's always interesting to know the facts about 5 and stuff like that, physically and mentally. Okay? And if you have any questions at any point, this is so informal, just shout it out, okay? Any questions so far? You guys are good? Okay.
Well, a little introduction. I studied in Canada at McGill University, and I moved here about 10 years ago, and quickly knew that I wanted to work with children. And at first, everybody would give me the tough autistic kids. You know, I was a newbie in the clinic, so anybody that had a really tough autistic child they didn't want to work with, they gave them to me. And I had barely worked with autistic children before. I remember just during, my placements in school, I had some autistic children, but never really had to treat one. And I remember one therapist said to me, just don't touch them. Really? Don't touch them? I'm thinking it's a little wild animal or something. And I couldn't connect. And then, through my intuition, I'm like, they're children like any other children. They're human like any other humans. And We all want love, we all want to be touched. Screw this, you know. But I learned through the years that you have to allow these children to come towards you and not you know, like just take them and touch them and everything else, because there are certain quote unquote rules in the sensory environment that they that are hardwired within them, and it's very difficult for them to change. You know, it completely disrupts them. So what I want everybody to understand in general is that a child that has any type of sensory needs, or even regular children that I see that come in for handwriting, I have a lot of handwriting kids that come to me. If the child is in what we call the fight or flight mechanism, which is in the sympathetic nervous system, if they are in that state, they will never be able to thrive because they have such high anxiety. So it could be so minor as a child having a tag that's bothering them, and to us it's like you just scratch on it and it's done, you're done with it. And others, it will disrupt their entire day, and then they're edgy and then they're moving, and then they're called behavioral, but meanwhile it's just because of this tactile thing that's going on. Or the lights, you know, a lot of lights are fluorescent lights these days, and some kids can actually pick up the little flashing. I don't know about you, I get migraines sometimes, and when I get a migraine, that's when I see it. And that's when I can really understand a little bit more what they might be going through. So I do definitely a lot of special needs cases, not necessarily typical, but they do come to me. I actually had a little boy recently, about a year ago, that the family called me up, and what was the issue? He freaks out when we light candles. Okay, so obviously this child is afraid, he's kicking in the fight or flight mechanism because of the candle. The mom said, I can't take him anywhere, we can't go to birthday parties, it's starting to disrupt our life, I can't light candles at home, I mean, it's a mess. Anyhow, and then when I met him, you know, I had to, you know, obviously you need to bond with the child first, and so he can trust you, because it's almost like I would want to put a tarantula in his hand. Like, this is the most fearful thing for him. And through, you know, through therapy, through things that we did, we got to the point where, you know, I was able to hold a little, a sparkler, and I said to him, all right, Adam, we're going to play Mother, Mother, May I Take a Step? So I'm on one end of the room and he's on the other end, and I said, Mother, Mother, may I take a step? Yes, one baby step, okay. Until we finally got to the point where he was able to hold it, and now he could go to birthday parties, and it's not a miracle that I created. This is not, it's just some kids they kick in, their nervous system is not working optimally, and it'll kick in this fight or flight mechanism. And what I want people to understand in terms of this happening in classrooms is that there's some kids that cannot tune out what's happening outside, and their ear is constantly being bothered by what's happening outside. So when we create a sensory environment for them, we try to keep in mind, all right, well, let's see if we hear anything. Sometimes I go into schools and I hear the air conditioner in the classroom, and that can disrupt the child completely. A child that has sensory issues, it'll completely disrupt them. And then you see them moving and they're touching and they're, you know, like they're completely restless.
I'm going to interrupt because most of the things that Nancy speaks about, again, all of us are sensitive to these things, all of us. That's called white noise, when you hear the whirring of the fan. But anyone with any kind of sensory issue is just more exacerbated. So, but we're all the same. So.
And I think what I see in my practice also is that, and this is just something that we're going to continue seeing more and more, the environment we live in. There's no escaping it. We come from an environment where everything is very fast moving. Even if a child is sitting at a computer, the flashing lights that come at him are so quick, those pixels are so fast that the brain is being stimulated really quickly, but if you look down at the body hasn't moved. So it's almost like we're creating this discrepancy in their world, and some kids can adjust to it really easily and then sit in a classroom and listen and they're fine, and some kids can't. They just can't. And we see this more and more. And I really, really believe, and this is just from experience of seeing these kids, I think if we give kids exposure, get them outside as much as possible. I have not seen a child that grew up on a farm that has sensory issues. It doesn't happen because they're exposed to smells and touch, and you know, whether you like it or not, you're dirty all the time. You're touching things and it smells like stuff, and you wake up to different sounds, and it's because of exposure. It's absolutely because of exposure. It's definitely a hardwired issue in the beginning, but these things could be, you know, not completely fixed. these things could be channeled differently. A child that's really hyper will probably end up being an adrenaline junkie later on if he has sensory issues. He'll want that, like you see kids that when they walk, they're even touching the walls when they walk. They're touching other kids because they need that input to their body. This is what they need, but we teach them ways of getting that input without having to do these things that could socially upset other children, or that, you're not going to touch everybody and touch things and tap and, like some kids just, all day.
Which is why I'm going to keep interrupting, because I
You
always do.
know.
Which is why also if there's a child who has, or an adult in many offices, I do many offices, and the owners of very large corporations, we put chairs in there that they can rock and move all the time because they have all this sense of energy. And that's just a simple thing to do for your child. If your child has a bit too much energy, just they can have movement, but still they can concentrate.
And I think that in a school setting, what's important to keep in mind is really to give these kids movement breaks. Kids learn through movement. I cannot say that enough. I think that if we all here, if I ask any of you, what's your best memory or the best thing that you learned in school when you were a kid, you're never going to pick out a science lesson that the teacher talked about. You're always going to talk about something that was a project probably that you had to do, and the research that you had to do, and you're checking and looking and going to pick out stuff in the garden to go and get. That's what we remember. And I can't say it enough. It's not enough to give kids like PE. It's not. Like, I wish that schools ideally would incorporate so much movement, so much touch, so much, all the sensory that comes with them, because it's very difficult for these kids also to to watch television and see all these fabulous things happening on TV or on video games, and then they need to sit down and talk to the teacher and listen to the teacher that's talking about, when you read in the book, it's about a little dog walking down the street. Like, really? My Superman's flying across the room in my head, so
Yeah.
I think that schools need to get with the program in terms of, getting them there, but, I think really if we can incorporate more movement in the classrooms, more of these sensory things, the knockout, let's try and get rid of all the sensory issues that could affect the child. I think that would be very
There have been
very
studies done in schools also that, where they had, at the end of every class, they had the children exercise for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, run around. Their scores were tremendous. I'm sure you're aware of that.
We do a lot of that. It's called EBC, Education Beyond the Classroom. And with EBC, we make sure that our children are out at least 3 times a day. They're out there at lunch, they're out there.
It's so important, it's critical.
And with EBC, we also go beyond the classroom. We want them to go out and explore things and go to the out in the area and just explore things. It's very important.
It's so important. It's so important. And you'll see also with little kids, what I get to see a lot. Kids come in with what we think might be a developmental delay, and then I'll ask the mom, well, do you have a nanny? And they say yes. And I say, well, this typically happens all the time because a nanny is paid to take care of the child. So she's paid to have that role. She's gonna take off his socks and shoes all the time, or put them back on, or brush his teeth for him sometimes. Like, they'll take it to a level where the child, doesn't know, so then things look like it's a developmental delay. Meanwhile, no, it's just because someone else has been doing it for them.
And we see that challenge, I'm sorry to interrupt you, we see that challenge sometimes with our children because they do not have strength in their hands and their fingers because they've never had dexterity movement. Because they've never had to open a jar, they've never had to close a drawer, they've never had to go to the refrigerator and get something for themselves. And we have to be careful that we enable our children and really give them the strength of being able to do all those things.
Yes, and it all ties in together. A lot of times I'll do family education and I ask the parents to be the ones to talk to the nanny, because even if I say it as a therapist, the bottom line is their boss might not be agreeing. But if the parents go ahead and speak, and I see a tremendous difference. As soon as that happens, it's tremendous. Because children will learn so fast. It's just, again, experience, exposure.
Those first 5 years of brain processing.
Yeah.
Let's go
They say
over.
you're not supposed to do anything for your child, you can do it for yourself.
A pediatrician once gave me the best
That's
advice.
what my mother always used to say.
Yeah, it's
It's
true.
true. It's
It's very
absolutely
true.
Absolutely.
When my daughters were about 2, the pediatrician said to me, Deborah, here's a word of advice. Whenever your daughters fall, I want you to count to 10 really slowly before you go, because Jewish Italian, I have like the worst mix in the world. And I want you to count to 10 and just wait and let them stand themselves. And it was because your instinct is, crazy mother, you just want to do everything, but it's true. It's true, and that helps them sensory-wise, tactile-wise. Let's go on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's for us, we can talk for hours about it, and it's endless. You know, it's what we love and it's what we live for, but I know you guys have places to go, so Nancy, we just have some products that we love that you guys can get on your own, or, as I said, we have them also, but just thoughts here.
We like incorporating lamps and light, things that are calming a lot of times. I like, in general, that when we design a room together, if it's possible to have the bedroom be the child's bedroom. And even when I do therapy and the parents tell me, oh, you can go in his room, I always say no. Because the child's bedroom is their nest, and I don't want them to, sometimes I have to, challenge them a little bit, and I don't want it to be done in their little nest,
So are you saying like, in a perfect world, the desk in the play area, in a perfect world, should be elsewhere if possible?
Yes, absolutely.
If possible.
I mean,
Anytime
play
it's fun.
area is wonderful in the room too, that's fine. But anything where it might be a little bit more challenging, I mean, when we're talking young children. when they're-
TVs,
I'm not sure you agree, but I think a bedroom should be a sanctuary. I don't think it should have a television in it. It should not have an iPad in it. It should not have anything that
Nothing
will
technical.
totally stimulate that child.
Absolutely.
Because when you go into your sanctuary, you should be nothing but rest.
Yeah, the
Yes.
association of the mind and the body needs to be that when I walk into my room, this is my cocoon. And that's why I always avoid, I've seen so many kids that I've taken into therapy later, and that they've had so much therapy, but it's in the bedroom, that they don't sleep, they have a really hard time sleeping. It's not a good thing.
We had a client, an adult, and she had her office in her bedroom. And I said, we have to move this. No. So what do? We put thick panels, beautiful panels, so at the end of the night, at least those curtains close. And it's psychologically, she cannot see or hear her work because it's her sanctuary. It must be the connected.
It's the only way to truly
Yes.
rest.
And for a child, it's the same. So like these are just some things, the lava lamps, like this lava lamp we love for a child who needs some stimulation because your fingers follow the electric current. Simple, inexpensive item. And then we have the typical lava lamp over here, just the basic one, very calm.
And also with lighting, what we like to do is that they can be in control of the lighting with children that have a hard time with the lighting. If it's dimmers, that's wonderful. When you're creating a space from the beginning, we like to do ideally what we can to help them control it, because they can control if they need more lighting or less lighting in terms of sensory children, the ones that are more affected by lighting.
I will install dimmers in every space in a client's home, closets, bathrooms, everywhere. There is not a space to be had, a pantry, that I do not install a dimmer, because exactly what Nancy says, you can control it. This is a little light that we love, it's a turtle, and when you light it, the reflection goes on the ceiling, so this can be by the child's bed, so they have control over the light if they're anxious, and that way they don't have to get out of bed and then get themselves all energized again. So the light goes on the ceiling and it creates the waves of the ocean, so it's very relaxing and calming. And then there's also a little button that you hear the sounds of the ocean. A simple little item. This is something the stuffed toy.
Yeah, stuffed toys. I mean, toys and anything that's fidgets are really nice for kids, even in the classrooms, or anything that's heavy. So this toy is pretty heavy actually, and these are nice because anything that's weighted will actually help the nervous system calm. It will help the nervous system secrete serotonin and actually calm the body. So kids that are really hyper and that need calming, or children that have lack of body awareness, like the ones that are hitting the walls,
Or
that's
flapping.
why they actually have lack of body awareness, we will weight them. We will put like a lap pad. I have a lot of teachers that at circle time will put a lap pad around on the kid's lap, or a little something around their shoulders, or like a little weighted snake.
This is a weighted blanket. Now this weighs 16 pounds. So you say, oh my God, that's so heavy. But this is terrific for adults. Again, adults love, I love this blanket. But for any child who you need to calm, putting a blanket like this, it will not suffocate them because the blanket, I always say buy the largest one because as the child grows, the blanket grows with them. And all the weight is not concentrated, it's spread throughout. And it's soft and cushy if you want to feel this. And as Nancy said, that serotonin is released. When the body's being pressed, it releases serotonin, which is a relaxant. Serotonin is the building block of melatonin, which many of you know to help you sleep. So this is a natural form of melatonin. It feels like a hug, exactly. It's pressing on you. It's like a massage. So this is one of our favorite items. Nancy also has the shoulder ones, again, to anchor and calm.
And it's great during homework time. When you start seeing the kids fidget, if you have a hard time with that, we'll put like a little, I'll put a little weighted snake on their shoulders, and that helps. It actually, it's the most wonderful thing. Or you can even pass by your child and just put pressure on the head, put pressure on the shoulders. It calms.
This is also because, again, we're talking about things that calm, because once they're calm and centered and balanced, then it allows their brain to be open, to be creative, and to focus on their tasks, doing their homework properly, because their body is calm. They've gotten a good night's sleep. They're rested. It's all, everything is connected. If you're not rested and you have a terrible night's sleep, you can't concentrate 100% the following day. So for children, it's the same. This is also, again, these are all items that we suggest you get on your own, or again, we love certain ones. But get a body pillow for your child, heavy. Always think weight. If it's not heavy, forget it. If it's too light, don't waste your time or your money. It should be heavy. So this, with a weighted blanket, it's perfection. Your child is being, the body is being addressed, all areas of the body are being addressed, and it's total calm and relaxation. We also have a beanbag that we love. Again, we've become like, we look for the best of the best because it's so important to us. There's a million beanbags out there. We love the one that we always give to our clients because it cocoons you. It's heavy. Again, it's all about heaviness. So if you have this, and let's say you put a tent, we also have tents. We have the cute teepee tents. We have the little cheapy tents. But if you can somehow put a small tent with a beanbag or a body pillow and a weighted blanket, all neutral, it is the perfect cocoon for your child. Perfect. There is nothing more perfect with a lava lamp, with a globe. This is from Home Goods. Just a globe. Relaxing to keep out of bed.
And another thing that you want to keep in mind, especially if we're talking about schools or even playrooms, I love things to be set up as stations, and we do that a lot. So we'll have a quiet area, and then, our kids are not quiet all day, so you want them moving around. So areas where they could, like trash pillows and mats and games that are easy to pull out and see and have, but also have a little area in the classrooms or also in the playrooms where, like Deborah said, like a little teepee or a closet that, you remove the door and they have their little cocoons, some books,
Enclosure, no.
something where they can, get a little quiet.
For doing homework and for concentrating, there's so many schools of thought, and I really think it depends on the child. I will always encourage that a desk never be near a window, because it's like myself, if I'm a big multitasker because I know I have ADD, I just know that. So, but I work well doing many projects at once. But for a child, if there's a window, there's traffic, there's movement, there's too much going on. Now, some people don't have a choice, and we put actually boards, these little foldable boards that we just put in front of the window when the child, so they feel enclosed, they can focus. Also, if their back is to a door, it's basic feng shui as well. If their back is to a door, that's psychologically, that's very disconcerting. What am I missing? What am I missing? Oh, I have to do math problems. What am I missing? So they should be able to, their body should be in front of the action, but not be distracted by it. Beds, same thing with beds. You should always be able to see the door of your bed, of your bedroom door, always, because again, it's disconcerting. Feng shui, it's all related. It's all about the psychology.
I know something about sitting, and it's something that we see a lot in the school. Children's height, the desk. I'm very sensitive to this because I never fit in chairs, but we always want children's feet to be on the ground. It's as simple as that, and it'll help so much our behavior, because if the feet are not on the ground, we can swing them, we start sliding in the chair, we start fidgeting. It's as simple as that, grounding the child. When his feet are on the ground, it's a lot.
Also, it has to do with, there's so many nerve endings, all the nerve endings are on the bottom of the feet, so if the feet are pressing on something, it's anchoring them. So, same thing, kissing, feels so good because all of the nerve endings are in the mouth, so same thing for the bottom of the feet. If the feet are anchored to something, their body is anchored, and they can now concentrate. It's allowing the path to concentrate. So.
There's a lot of stuff that you can just do, and we have the awareness of it, what the general concepts are. There's a lot of things that you realize that you can just do without having to even have a lot of equipment. It's the way you organize a classroom, it's the way you organize your child's schedule, make sure that they go, let's say, to the park before coming home to do homework. There's so much that you can do without really even having equipment if you need to, and in classrooms, I will go in a lot, and I usually sit in the classroom for an hour or two, and I always say, like, I don't like giving teachers just a list of, okay, this is what you should do. I really like getting into the classroom and feeling the energy of the class and the flow, because every class will be different. Sometimes it'll be maybe the vent, I'm hearing the vent, but in another classroom I won't hear it, or the way that the teacher organizes things. I see teachers that speak too much, and the kids are like,
They're lost.
they're not even listening. And I tell the teacher, all you